Today I've got a really special one lined up for you. I'm going to show you the best way to prepare a fish. Well, my favorite way anyways. Went out last night, caught some fish, have them thawing in the sink right now. While that's happening, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to get ready and make our tartar sauce from scratch. Got a couple ingredients for that. So you need Hellmans Mayo, absolute necessity. Don't go with any other brand. This is the one you need. What we're gonna do is put some capers in there. We're gonna chop those up nice and fine. Some bread and butter pickles, and some fresh dill. So you can buy the stuff in a can, but it just doesn't have as much flavor. So try to get fresh dill if you can. So the next thing we need is we're gonna make a salsa. Kind of salsa. My wife likes to call it a pico de gallo.
Pico de gallo.
That's what, okay. Hey, we recently went to Mexico. They had this stuff everywhere. So all you need for that is some tomatoes. I like the Roma tomatoes because they're a little more firm. You need some limes, some cilantro. My wife hates cilantro, but I love it. Red onion, and then also this salsa mix. It's like a spice blend. Watkins Salsa mix. So aside from that, what we're gonna put them in are some corn tortillas. You can go with flour. I prefer corn. They just feel a lot more authentic. I like that a little bit better. And then to fry the fish, we're gonna do ketchup cook. I prefer this for walleye tacos because if you double batter them and fry them with ketchup cook, I find it's a lot more crunchy and it goes better together with everything else inside of the taco. Minco de cinco, and then tartar sauce on top. And that's gonna be good. Okay, so for our tartar sauce, we're gonna take a small bowl, grab a spoon, and first things first, we're gonna use mayo. I like to use the Hellmans stuff, just because it tastes the best. That's why. I'm gonna take this off. I'm gonna put, for this, I would say like 3 big spoonfuls. We're not gonna do any official measurements today. 3 spoonfuls of that. Okay, so the next thing you're gonna need are capers, and then we're also gonna take our bread and butter pickles to make what would be our relish. You can also use, instead of these 2 things, relish, just 1 part mayo to 1 part relish, but I like to go this route because what I do is at the end I take some of this pickle juice and that really adds to the flavor of the tartar sauce. So we're gonna take a few capers, throw them down on our cutting board. Okay, so you're gonna take your capers, put a bunch down. Like I said, I'm not gonna do any exact measurements. You're gonna take some pickles. If I can get the jar open. Jar opening tool. So we're gonna take your knife and you're gonna cut them up really finely. I'm not a chef at all. I barely cook. This is like the only thing I make. So if you want to roast me in the comments about my knife skills, you can do that. So I just take your knife, cut these up nice and finely, move them around a bit. I'm going to cut them very finely as well. I like to do strips, kind of like if I was cutting an onion or something. Gonna throw your capers in and your pickles. Now I used a little bit too many. Pickles, so I'm gonna put these ones aside for later. Next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take your dill, open that up. I'm gonna take a couple of the stalks. And then all I'm gonna do is pull off the ends. Okay, now that is gonna go in as well. And the last part is we're gonna take a little bit of our pickle juice, just like that. You wanna eye it. It's gonna be more of a taste thing at the end and a texture thing rather than the measurements. So we're gonna mix this all together. And then that's what you're left with. the thickness there is a little too heavy. So like I said, it's more of a texture and a taste thing. It's a little bit too heavy on the mayo side because it is a mayo base. So I'm gonna put some more pickle juice in there, and that's going to dilute it down into that zesty, almost burning the back of your throat. Now that we've got the tartar sauce where we want it, we're going to cover this up, put it in the fridge. That's going to allow it to thicken a little bit more, and the flavors of the dill, those capers, and the pickles are all going to infuse a little bit more into that mayo. So it's going to be a little bit more zesty. What I would typically do on a guide trip or a typical day is put it in the fridge overnight, use it the next day. Today we're just going to put it in the fridge for a couple hours, and that'll get it primed. Okay, so now it's salsa time. I'm gonna grab another small bowl, same size as what we did with the tartar sauce. We're gonna start off with our tomatoes. So I'm just gonna dice them up into little cubes. So next we're gonna take an onion. We're gonna dice that up as well. Okay, one onion, one full red onion with the 2 Roma tomatoes. Okay, next, cilantro. So we're gonna take a bunch of cilantro leaves off the stems. This is my favorite part of it. This is where I feel like all the flavor comes from. Take some zest from the lime. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my salsa mix. And again, there's no measurements in this house. So I'm going to put a bit in there. I'd say that's probably good for the amount that we have. Okay, so that's what you're left with. So we're gonna cover that as well and put it in the fridge. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm gonna clean the fish. That will be another video though. So once we're done the fish, we're gonna get to breading it, cooking it, and then putting it all together. So now we're on to the fish. Just cut this up. Have it sitting here on the paper towel. I like to pat it dry before I do all this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our catch and cook. I'm almost out of the original stuff, so I'm just gonna add the beer batter mix. It's all just a dry coating, so you can do that. It's totally fine. So I've got this all in a big pan. This is my breading station. We're starting here with our fish. Just cut these up. They're looking like that. I'm actually going to cut them into smaller pieces before I throw them into the water. With catch and cook, you don't need anything more than water. I found my friends Jay and Josh, they do it like this all the time. They just put it in the water, put it back into the coating, put it back into the water, put it back into the coating, and then you're done. One thing I will note though is you want to make sure that you start frying as soon as you have these things coated, just so that the coating stays dry on top of the fish before you put it into the oil. And I find that makes a difference in how crunchy it ends up being at the end. So we're gonna take our fish, put it into the water, into the batter, back into the water, back into the batter, and then we're done. We're gonna put these down as fast as we can, throw them into the oil, and then we'll start assembling some tacos. So we're gonna put a few pieces into the water to start. And I do this with a fork so that my hands don't get disgusting. They probably will at the end of this anyways, but I'm gonna try my best. So you push it down into the batter. I'm gonna cover it the whole way, and you wanna really push that in. Flip it over, make sure it gets into every nook and cranny, and really work it in. Make sure it gets into every single piece. Make sure it's all coated before you put it back into the water. And once it's in the water, you wanna make sure it gets nice and saturated. And it's gonna end up looking a darker orange like that. Put it back into the coating and do the exact same. You really want to work that in. I can't say that enough times. Even like when you go and you open the piece of fish like this, when you maneuver it, you can see those little cracks open up. You want to make sure all those are filled up. Like for example, this is a really good example here. You see like that? You want to make sure all that's filled up before you place it down and you're done with it. So it does take a little lot longer than what most would do, but it makes it that much better in the end. Okay, so now we're done breading, and this is what they look like. So you see how it still looks nice and dry on the outside. See, this is the first one I did. You can see there's some parts there that are starting to look like some of the moisture's coming through. That's fine as long as the whole thing doesn't look like that. I really do recommend though trying to fry these as quick as you can. Never ever put these in the fridge after you've breaded them before you fry them, because then they're all gonna be wet and it's not gonna turn out the way you want it. So this is what we want. The nice thing about Catch and Cook is they have a resealable bag. So when we're all done, we can just scoop what's left back in there and use it next time. Okay, so I'm gonna deep fry these things. A deep fryer with this pot. I think my wife calls it a Dutch oven. The only reason I'm using it is because I've seen her fry chicken fingers in it before, and I know that she's not gonna yell at me. Or I know that she can't yell at me for frying fish in it. So, going to take our canola oil. We're going to put a good amount of oil in here so we know that all the fish will be covered when we put it in. I'm going to say about half a jug, maybe a third. Yeah, between a third and a half. Turn our burner on to high. And now we're going to wait a little bit. Heat's been on for a few minutes now. I think we're getting close to about the time where it should be hot enough. So I'm going to put one tester in there. It's starting to bubble a little bit. Probably not quite as hot as I'd like it. I'm going to turn that up a bit. But a great way to know if your oil is hot enough is you put a tester in first, and then when it starts to bubble, it's all more of a feel thing for me. Like I said, I never use measuring cups, or I don't use thermometers or anything like that. It's all just a feel thing. So I've got my heat down to a little over half now, because it looks like it's about ready. I'm going to start putting all of our pieces in. And they should only take a couple minutes. So I'll put probably 6 or 7 pieces maybe in here at a time. Do a couple rounds of that. And then they'll be ready. Your oil is now hot enough. It's bubbling pretty violently, and the pieces of fish that we have in there are starting to float to the top. So when they're ready, now that it's floating to the top, it's technically ready, but now I'm just waiting for that outside to brown. I'm going to give it a few more minutes in here. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. Not a few more minutes, sorry, a few more seconds in here. And I'm gonna start adding some pieces too while these other ones are ready, because that's gonna cool the oil down a little bit and make sure that we don't run too hot and start burning the oil, burning the fish. It's not gonna taste as good. Right where we have it right now is pretty well perfect. And now I'm gonna look and see which ones are the darker ones, and I'll take those out first. So this one's good. This one's good. And if you pick them up, another way to know that if they're done or not is if they're stiff. So this coating gets really nice and crispy. It's pretty stiff when it's done. If it's not stiff, you pick it up and it kind of folds over into your scoop. It's not quite done yet. These pieces are pretty small and the fish cooks pretty quickly. So as soon as it starts to float, we give it enough time to brown and enough time to stiffen up, and then it's done. And that's it. Okay, so this is exactly what we want. Nice and brown. You see how it's all evenly coated too? So there's no bare spots from where you're grabbing it, and no thumbprints. It's all nice and evenly coated. Super crunchy. We're gonna let this sit for a couple minutes. So we'll let that sit for a few more minutes, let it stiffen up a little more. We'll go into the fridge, we'll grab our salsa and the tartar sauce, and then we'll put the taco together and eat it. Took the tartar sauce and the salsa out of the fridge. This looks like it thickened up pretty nice. It was only in there for a couple hours, but that's enough time to let the dill and everything else settle in, and it tastes more like a tartar sauce rather than a mayo. Get a couple spoons. Stir this around a bit. Now we're ready. Okay, so now we're ready. We're gonna take our tortilla, put it down. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take a piece of fish. This, you see, I'm gonna actually crack this one open. Doesn't that look awesome? So I'm gonna put this guy down in halves. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take our salsa, put a good healthy, I'm gonna put 2 scoops on here, 2 smaller spoonfuls. And then I'll take some of our tartar sauce and I'm gonna drizzle it just on the top. Like that. That's it. I'm a little embarrassed about this part, but you're gonna watch me devour down on this thing. I'm gonna get real close so you can see. Oh. Sorry, 1 second. I can't stop. Can't even talk. I'm very impressed with myself with that. I don't know how Guy Fieri does it. Man. I'm gonna bite this one. I'm just gonna bite it so you guys get to hear how crunchy it is. It's crunchy. Woo. It's hot too. I'm gonna use another plate so you have to start my old gross one. So you take your tortilla. I like the corn one. Makes you feel like I'm back in Mexico. Put a couple pieces of fish on there. The crunch from the fish is awesome. And then you just keep it super simple. So you got your salsa and a little bit of tartar sauce on top, and that's it. There's a lot of flavor coming from that salsa. Like I said, that's probably the focal point of the whole dish. So I personally love the cilantro in there. Love it. That makes it for me. It tastes so fresh. Then you throw your homemade tartar sauce on there. And I'm probably going to eat all this before Keisha even gets back home, but we can keep that between you and me. I'm not going to make you watch me eat one again, but that is by far my favorite way to prepare and eat fish. I'm going to have the whole recipe below. Like I said, no measurements, but I'm going to have everything that you're going to need and what to do to make this in the description below. Thanks for watching. You comment whatever your favorite way to eat fish is, but give this one a try. I'm sure you'll like it. See you at the next one.